Namaste and welcome to a presentation on registration of charges, a brief review. Let us understand the concept of charges. Charges are defined in Transfer of Property Act and also in the Companies Act. And the interesting point to note is, while Transfer of Property Act defines it, registration of charges is coming under Companies Act, means wherever borrowing is done by a company. Let us first understand what section 100 says. It defines charges as where immovable property of one person by the act of parties or by operation of law is made a security for the payment of money to another. Means immovable properties by act of parties or operation of law are made security for payment of money, and the transaction doesn't amount to mortgage. If it fulfills these two conditions, then the later person is said to have a charge on the property. Simply put, when an immovable property of a person is made a security for the money granted to him, the grantor gets a charge on the assets. Section 2 subsection 16 of Companies Act defines charges as it is an interest or lien created on property or assets of a company or any of its undertakings or both company and undertakings as a security, and it includes a mortgage. Once again, here the stress is on treating property or assets of the borrower as a security, and an interest or lien is created in favor of the lender. Means there is a amount lent, there is an asset, the asset becomes a security for the amount lent. It creates a right for the lender. If we look into both the definitions, you will find there is a borrower and there is a lender, two parties, and the charge has to be in writing. There is the creation of an interest or right in the assets of the company which borrows. The assets of the person who borrows is brought under charge. Invariably, the asset involved is immovable property, and that immovable property belongs to the borrower. And whenever we presume charge, the intention has to be very clear that the property is going to be treated as a security for repayment of principal and also its interest. A charge, although it is defined under Transfer of Properties Act, it doesn't attract registration under the Transfer of Properties Act for the simple reason there is no transfer of property. Because under charge, the arrangement is such that the borrower can take hold of the assets when there is a default. Till there is a default, there is no question of transfer of any property, and hence a charge is not a mortgage since there is no transfer of property. A charge is wider than a mortgage. It includes more than a mortgage. Therefore, the saying, every mortgage is a charge, but every charge is not a mortgage. To say charge includes mortgage and beyond, it includes more than that. If you look into the charge, there are two varieties of charge: fixed charge and floating charge. And there is an eventuality when floating charge also becomes a fixed charge. Let us just understand for conceptual clarity. A fixed charge is created on specific identified fixed assets. When it is fixed charge, if the company wants to sell, transfer or dispose of that asset which is already identified, it has to take the approval of the lender, or it has to pay off the lender. Therefore, fixed charge identifies the asset with the lender, and if you want to sell or dispose it of part or full, clearance from the lender is required, or you need to discharge him. What is floating charge? Floating charge doesn't talk of a particular asset, but it talks of a cluster of assets. And from the cluster of assets, the borrower is free to sell or transfer select assets in the ordinary course of business. He might be dealing in those assets itself, subject to keeping the overall security within acceptable limits. He can deal with those assets, dispose them off. And this right to dispose is not to the benefit of the lender. Therefore, always lenders prefer a fixed charge. And if you have both fixed charge and floating charge, and if the company goes into liquidation or insolvency, fixed charge comes ahead of the floating charge. It has got a preference, and hence the preference of lenders to always go for a fixed charge. And we should also understand, when a floating charge becomes a fixed charge, the process is called crystallization. A floating charge becomes fixed charge when the company is about to wind up. Decision to wind up is made, or a receiver is appointed by the court. Then floating becomes fixed. Or the company has defaulted and the borrower has taken, the lender has taken recovery action. It is as good as there is a default or there is a closure proceedings or liquidation proceedings, which converts floating into fixed charge. With this basic understanding of the concept of charge, we proceed further. The interesting thing about registration of charges is that the various steps that we are noting in the course of this study, it is just like a computer program of if and else. Means, for example, if you were supposed to file the details within 30 days, first step says you have to register in 30 days. And next step says, what if you don't do in 30 days? Do you have any option? Now, if you go through that, this entire cycle of study of registration of charges follows this logic very religiously. That way, it is quite interesting. Second point to note here is registration of charges is important not only for studies, but for we as individuals. We may be borrowers or lenders, or we may be working for borrowers or lenders. In both cases, we will have the responsibility to see whether the registration is done or whether the registration of payment is done, because both make a lot of difference in terms of final claims. Hence, this topic has to be in memory for our general knowledge also. What are the 6 components that we have taken here now? There is registration, which falls under section 77, and also rule 6. You have to understand one thing. Act has got sections, and when this act is put into practice, it is taken, it takes the help of rules framed for implementation. Act talks of what and rules talk of how. We need a combination of both what to be done, how to be done. Therefore, we study both acts and rules wherever required. And wherever there is a conflict between a rule and an act, it is the act which prevails. We have got registration, then we have got register of charges. How to apply for it? What is the notice on register of charges? Then when the payment is made and the loan is settled, there is a memorandum of satisfaction. Or whenever there is an appointment of a receiver, what happens? And should the company maintain its own register for whatever charges it has got or it has closed? Where it has to be maintained? And as always, what is contravention? Is there any rectification possible with the intervention of central government to give benefit to a person who has done something innocently? Now, this is the scope of our study of charges, and you will find it quite interesting and useful inside studies and beyond also. This is a topic-wise breakdown under various heads for an immediate grasp of the nature and scope of our studies. Now we are at stage 1 of registration. Under registration, we will be going into section 77 with its subsections 1, 2, 3, 4, and we will also study rule 6, sub-rule 3, which is talking of a specific word called conclusive evidence. This word of conclusive evidence we also noted in respect of certificate of incorporation. Getting into section 77, it says 77 subsection 1 says every company creating a charge on its property or assets or any of its undertakings situated in or outside India. It talks of every company creating a charge, and assets may be inside India or outside India. And creating of charge, within what time? It is supposed to register the particulars with the registrar of companies within 30 days. How do you do it? It has to be, the document of registration has to be signed by the company and the charge holder. Means borrower and lender both have to sign the document of charge and file it with the registrar within 30 days. The property may be situated inside or outside India. It may be an asset of the company or any of its undertakings. This is what has to be done, when it has to be done, how it has to be done. As I said, 30 days I am supposed to do. If else, if I have not done in 30 days, the section says the registrar may allow registration within 60 days instead of 30 days if the company pays additional fee, and it has to satisfy the registrar that it is a genuine requirement. If not done in 30 days, you can do it in 60 days, but you have to pay an additional fee. It goes further. If you are not able to do in 60 days, it says, if the registration is not made in the period specified, registrar, on the application of the company or the lender, may allow the registration to be done within a further period of 60 days. 30 days, period of 60 days, and 60 after 60. 30, 60 plus 60. means 120 days. Here you have to pay value based fees. It is known as ad valorem fees, which has to be paid. If you do it regularly, normal fees. If you do it 30 days late by 60 days, additional fee. If you do it 60 days after those 60 days, within that limit, at the discretion of the registrar, you have to pay ad valorem fees. Now the question that arises is, you are supposed to register on day 0 to 30. You fail to do it in 30 days. You fail to do it in 60 days. And you are doing it at the end of 120 days. Does it make any difference for you? It doesn't make a difference for you as a lender. Let us suppose there is another lender B who has created a charge in between. You have a charge here now, but you did not register the charge. Subsequently, the company took another loan from B and he registered his charge between 0 and 60 days, and your charge, which was senior to him in time of giving, you did not register. You register after 60 days. Now your charge comes subsequent to this. The question that comes here is, any subsequent registration shall not prejudice right acquired before the charge is actually registered. Who acquired the rights? Mr. B acquired rights as another lender before you registered. Therefore, he has got a preference over you, and whether you register here by paying fee or so, it doesn't become registration here. Your registration is done at here only. In timeline, B becomes a senior and you become only next to him. This is the meaning of any subsequent registration of a charge shall not prejudice any right acquired. Any right acquired in respect of any property before the charge is actually registered. This is the provision of 77(1), 30, 60, 120 and subsequent registration not to prejudice rights acquired in respect of any property by a third party. Now we will go to 77 subsection 2. What does it state? Where a charge is registered under subsection 1, we registered it under subsection 1 now. Subsection 1 covered these areas. The registrar shall issue a certificate of registration. Whether you register here or register here, he will give you a certificate of registration to the company and also to the lender in whose favor the charge is created. There is a certificate of registration issued by ROC once the registration under 77 subsection 1 is done. Fantastic. Then we go to section 77 subsection 3. What does it say? No charge created by a company shall be taken into account by the liquidator either under the Act or under Insolvency Code or any other creditor unless it is duly registered and certificate of registration is given by the registrar. Simply put, if there is no registration done, there is no certificate of registration. If there is no certificate of registration, your charge is not recognized. What happens if a liquidator doesn't recognize your charge? You should understand what happens when the company goes into liquidation. Company A is here. It is liquidated on this day. In that case, on the day of liquidation, the liquidator comes, he takes away all assets of the company. But if you have a certificate of registration, for example, our company has taken a certificate of registration in respect of one asset, liquidator cannot take over that asset because there is already a certificate of registration which says we have got a charge on that asset. It doesn't belong to the other creditors. It belongs to us exclusively. This is what he says. If there is no certificate of registration, means if you fail to register Your liquidator will not recognize your charge. He will take away all assets of the company. Therefore, to protect your interest, you need to have a certificate of registration by filing it in time. We have got section 77, subsection 4. Nothing in subsection 3, understand these things very clearly, nothing in subsection 3 shall prejudice any contract, obligation for the repayment of money secured by the charge. What does it mean? Whether a liquidator recognizes it or not, think in terms of the company. Company cannot say, we have not registered the charge, therefore we will not repay the loan. Company cannot say so. Liquidator may not accept your charge, but there is a charge which is unregistered. What section 77(4) says is that registered or not registered, there is a loan, it is agreed. Yes, there is a charge, it's agreed. Therefore, the borrower has got an obligation to repay today or tomorrow. Means registration or no registration doesn't affect the liability of the company to repay the loan. Registration of charge is a procedural matter, but the factual matter is there is a loan and it has to be repaid. 77 subsections 1, 2, 3, 4 are quite interesting in the way they take it forward. Rule number 6 under chapter 6 is relevant at this stage where we are registering and getting a certificate of registration. Rule number 6 states, where a charge is registered with the registrar under section 77 or 78, we will look into that 78 in the subsequent slide, he shall issue a certificate of registration in a specific form. And where there is a modification of charge also, registrar shall issue a certificate of modification. What does a certificate of registration or modification issued by the registrar indicate? It says anything which is issued under subrule 1 and 2, subrule 1 and subrule 2, certificate of registration or certificate of modification. It is a conclusive evidence. Its validity cannot be contested. It is proven beyond doubt that the requirement of chapter 6 pertains to registration of charges, have been complied with. Anything which is coming under the head conclusive evidence is talking of an irreversible process and a proven fact. Therefore, any certificate of registration issued by the registrar is beyond any doubt and beyond any proof. It is complete, conclusive, and it cannot be contested in a court of law. This is what we need to understand. We have seen the registration and conclusive evidence of certificate. Next step, we go to section 78, 80 and 81 on further details on registration of charges. We will also deal with register of charges. We have noted under section 77 that a charge will be registered by the lender and the borrower jointly, but it is the initiative of the borrower which is required. But invariably, if the borrower is not doing the registration intentionally or otherwise, what can the lender do? Section 78 gives him a remedy. It says, where company who is the borrower fails to register within the first 30 days, the lender need not have to wait, because for him security is important. The lender or his representative may apply himself. He has got the agreement which he signed with the company creating the charge. Along with that, he can apply to the registration for registration of charge. This is an option available. Company doesn't register, therefore the lender himself goes to registrar of companies, files the papers. The registrar, once he receives the papers from the lender, he gives a notice to the company and he says, if we do not hear from you within 14 days showing sufficient cause why we should not register this charge, we will allow registration on payment of prescribed fees. Means the company, the borrower, the lender has approached registrar, he has filed for registration, registrar will give a notice to the company, wait for 14 days, and the company has to justify why the registration should not be done. If he doesn't hear from the company or if he is not convinced, he will ask the lender to pay the fee and he will go ahead with the registration. Now this is registration done by the lender. And this is a job which was to be done by the company. Company was supposed to pay and do it. But now, because of the default of the company not doing it within the first 30 days, the lender is doing it. Therefore, whatever expense he spends on fees or additional fees for registration, he can recover from the borrower or from the company. 78 is very clear. Lender can register, he can recover his expenses, and registrar will register and go ahead. Now comes section 80. What does section 80 talk of? It talks of where a charge is registered under 77, the previous slide, it becomes a notice. For example, you have registered with the registrar of companies. It becomes a public document. Anybody who deals with the company or deals with the company's property has to recognize this charge which is already there. Register of charges will be there, and every subsequent lender, he cannot say I was not aware of this charge and therefore I have lent it myself, I have got precedence over the others. No. It says any person acquiring a property or undertakings or part thereof deemed to have notice of the charge. Notice of the charge means the earlier lender who has registered the charge, his right is established. Any subsequent acquirer of right is only subordinate to him. That is how it suggests. Then coming to section 81, what the registrar does? The registrar shall keep a register, and that register will contain particulars of all registered charges company wise. Every company registers, it has a folio. In that folio, he registers all charges registered by that company. Then that register is open to inspection by any person on payment of a prescribed fee. Now this is where we say its knowledge by anyone who deals with the company is essential. Therefore, everybody before dealing with the company in terms of money or purchase of assets first looks into register of charges with the ROC to find out what are the charges created by this company, so that his borrowing or his transaction or his purchase is without any encumbrances. And so much for 78, 80 and 81. After 81, we come to rule 7, which is something to do with the register. What it says? Now, the bound volumes and books maintained by the registrar of companies apart, today it is all electronic media. What rule clarifies is The particulars of charges maintained on the Ministry's Corporate Affairs portal mcagov.in. It shall be deemed to be the register of charges for the purpose of section 81. To put it the other way, all entries of registration of charges made by the Registrar of Companies and reflected on the Company Affairs, Ministry of Company Affairs portal itself is sufficient to be a public document of register of charges under section 81. Therefore, the moment it appears in this portal, the registration process is complete, and as a part of public document which has to be within the knowledge of people who deal with the company, this rule clarifies you can refer to this portal for all the register of charges and have an inspection of the same. Our next stop will be at Memorandum of Satisfaction. When a loan or a charge is cleared or discharged, either the company can intimate the Registrar of Companies, or in the absence of intimation from the company, there is an alternative option available. We will study this. Section 82 once again talks of registration of satisfaction. When a charge is cleared, the borrower can file a return with the registrar stating we have satisfied this charge and the charge is cleared. The provision subsection 1 of 82 says within 30 days from the date of payment or satisfaction in full or part, a company shall intimate the registrar that we have paid, and this is within 30 days. If it has not intimated the registrar within 30 days, there is one more alternative. An application can be submitted either by the company or by the lender or charge holder. It involves additional fee because you have not paid it within 30 days. The registrar will allow such intimation of payment, and it has to be made within 300 days of such payment or satisfaction. Means you do the intimation to registrar formally within 30 days of payment or discharge, or you have an option to pay with a fee and make the filing with the registrar within a period of 300 days of payment. What is the process? 30 days or 300 days? What does the registrar do? On receipt of intimation under subsection 1, the registrar shall send a notice to the holder of the charge. Because here it has to be confirmed not with the company but with the lender, because we are removing his charge as it is already paid off. It will cause a notice to the holder of the charge asking him to show cause within next 14 days. A 14 days notice is given as to why the payment should not be recorded in the register. Before recording in the register, they will wait for a reply from the lender or the holder of the charge. If the lender or the holder of charge doesn't object, or he is not able to show a cause or reason for not registering it, the registrar shall order to record Memorandum of Satisfaction. Memorandum of Satisfaction is the reverse of registration of charge. It clears the charge, it lifts the charge, and once it records this, it will send an information to the company that the registrar has recorded the Memorandum of Satisfaction. With that, the charge is recorded as satisfied. 83 subsection 1 talks of another situation. In the earlier case, we saw the company is asking the recording to be done. 83 subsection 1 talks of a situation where the registrar has received no intimation from the company, but he has received evidence to his satisfaction that the debt covered by the charge has been paid or satisfied in whole or part. He has information from some sources. He also might be having an information that the property under the charge has been released because the payment has been made of the borrowing, or the property is no more with the company. It has ceased to form a part of the company's thing. All this based on evidence with the registrar to his satisfaction. No intimation from the company. What he can do? Although he has not heard from the company anything, based on the proof and evidence that he has, registrar on his own can make an entry in the register of charges stating the charge is satisfied, or that a part of the property is released from the charge, or the property has ceased to form a part of the company's property. If you could just see, these are all interlinked things. Based on this information, he passes a conclusion like this. Based on information here, he passes a conclusion on this. Based on information in A, he passes a conclusion like this. And once he does it, he will inform the affected parties within 30 days of doing this. Means section 83 talks of sumo to action from the registrar based on evidence received by him, but after giving proper attention to the details and being satisfied that there is a settlement done, property has been released, or it has ceased to be a part, he will make entries on his own and he will inform the affected parties within 30 days. The next step will take us to deal with appointment of a receiver or manager. Section 84 under subsection 1 talks of what happens if an appointment of a receiver or manager is made. You must be aware, receiver is appointed when the company has got assets to be taken over by the liquidator on winding up. It requires an order from the court, or when he appoints a manager, there should be a document which gives the power to the lender to appoint such a receiver or manager, either an order or a document which gives power. And section 84 subsection 1 says, if any person obtains an order is always from a court, for appointment of a receiver or a person to manage the property of a company subject to charge, or without an order, if a person appoints such receiver or person under any power contained in any instrument. Certain instruments give the power directly. In the event of this default, the lender is entitled to appoint a manager. In both these situations, the person who appoints will give a notice of such appointment to the company and also to the registrar with a copy of the order or a copy of the instrument which supports the appointment, and it has to be done within 30 days of passing of the order or making of the appointment. A 30 days notice with proof to be given to both registrar and the company. What the registrar will do? He shall register the particulars of the receiver in the register of charges, of course, on payment of the prescribed fee. 84 subsection 1 simply talks of a lender can appoint a receiver or a manager when he does it based on an order or based on an instrument. He will file details with the receiver and also intimate the company within 30 days of such appointment, and the registrar will register the same, record the same in the register of charges on payment of a prescribed fee. That's fine. Then under subsection 84 subsection 2, there is a duty cast on the person appointed as a manager or receiver, what he should do. His joining or appointment is filed by the appointer. When he ceases to be so, date of closure of his function, the person who is appointed as a manager or receiver, he has to give a notice to both company and to the registrar, and the registrar shall register the same. When he enters, the appointer will file the details to the registrar and company. When he leaves, it is his responsibility to inform both registrar and company that he ceases to be manager or receiver from a specific date. Register of charges is maintained by the registrar of companies, and there is a counterpart to that to be maintained with the company as such as a part of its internal records. Section 85, which we will be dealing now, will cover this aspect of maintenance of register of charges by the company. Section 85, subsection 1 explains that the company shall keep at its registered office a register of charges, and there is a specified form and the manner which it has to be maintained as per the Act, and it shall cover all charges including floating charges. Means it is fixed plus floating, both charges will be included therein, which pertains to properties of the company or its undertakings, and each charge has to be kept with required details and particulars. It is explained to the extent essential. Along with this entry, we also have to file a copy of the instrument which creates the charge. For example, with the lenders, if you have entered into a loan agreement and based on that you have entered in the register of charges, a copy of the loan agreement also will be filed or kept along with the register of charges. This is the obligation of the company to maintain register of charges. And this register of charges is available for public inspection during business hours. Both register of charges as well as instrument of charges. It can be seen by any member or creditor without any fee because they are insiders. Any other person other than a member or creditor may have to pay the prescribed fee. That will be regarding the registration of register of charges to be maintained by the company and permitting it to be seen by members and creditors without fee and by any other person with payment of fee during business hours when it is open for inspection. This concluding section under others is listing out the contravention and the punishment meted out, and it also talks of certain acts of support wherein the central government condones certain delays and authorizes rectifications to be done in recognition of the facts which are available to it. We will see that in the ensuing slides. Section 86 subsection 1 deals with contravention of provisions contained in chapter 6. And for the contraventions, there's a punishment to the company and to officer. Company punishable with fine extending up to 10 lakh rupees with a minimum of 1 lakh. And every officer in default attracts imprisonment which may extend to 6 months and a fine which shall not be less than 25,000 and which may extend to 1 lakh rupees also. The spirit of it is contraventions are costly and they should be avoided as a good corporate citizen. And 86 subsection 2 talks of if any person willfully furnishes false or incorrect information or suppresses any material information, it will be attracting action under section 447, which deals with fraud. Therefore, it is relevant that under section 86 subsection 2, when it refers to section 447, to understand section 447 will be quite useful to us in this regard. If you refer to section 447, it deals with the punishment for fraud. It groups the fraudulent activities into two while classifying the punishments. Fraud where no public interest is involved, fraud where public interest is involved. If public interest is involved, harsher punishments are given. It says, any fraudulent act which involves public interest, imprisonment to the concerned will not be less than 3 years. It may go up to 10 years also. And there will be a fine not less than the amount of fraud, but it may extend to 3 times the amount of fraud. Very strict penalties and imprisonments with minimum punishment at 3 years and minimum punishment at full 100% amount of the fraud. It can go up to 3 times. Second classification talks of where no public interest is involved. There it goes for 2 types of frauds. Fraud where the amount involved is 10 lakhs or 1% of the turnover of the company, whichever is less. Means if it is at least 10 lakhs or above or 1% of the turnover, it has got slightly harsher punishment. It says imprisonment shall not be less than 6 months. In case of public interest, it is 3 years. Here it is 6 months. And the fine shall not be less than the amount of fraud, which may go to 3 times. These both are the same. Difference is only in respect of the imprisonment. It is 3 years versus 6 months. If the fraud is of a smaller amount, less than 10 lakh rupees or less than 1% of the turnover of the company, there is no minimum punishment. It says imprisonment can go up to 5 years or there can be a fine of 50 lakh rupees or both. Means there are optional penalties involved here. Imprisonment may or may not be there. Fine may or may not be there, or both may be there. Therefore, if you look into when public interest is involved, one category of punishment. When the amount involved is at least 10 lakh and above, another category. Third category is in respect of when the amount is less and there is no public interest involved. Section 447 provisions are relevant in various issues involving companies. It pertains to even the deposits, directors, many contraventions where fraud comes into picture, section 447 and this presentation might be of use to you. Section 87 is another section which talks of the discretion of central government to grant some leniency to the parties involved. What it says, the central government, on being satisfied that the omission to give intimation to the registrar of the satisfaction of charge within the time prescribed, or omission or misstatement of the filings previously made, either information not given or it is filed with wrong information or misstatements, or it is omitted to be filed, with respect to any charge or modification or satisfaction under section 82, 83. This is all reviewing the things which have happened or there is a default in filing. If the central government is convinced that the omission or filing was due to inadvertence or due to some unavoidable situations, sufficient cause, and central government should also be convinced that these things are not in the nature of prejudicial to the interests of creditors or shareholders. Number one, it feels that there is a lapse, but the lapse is not intentional and the lapse is not also hurting the creditors or shareholders of the company. What will the central government do? In these situations, if there is an application from the company or the person interested, the central government can consider that application and it can direct the registrar giving time for recording the payment or satisfaction, or wherever the filing earlier has been done with the misstatements, it can be rectified. What the government does here is that it is allowing extra time where the filing has not been done for a just and expedient reason, and it also authorizes the registrar to rectify the records which have been wrongly done based on omission or misstatement. This is the provision of 87, which empowers the central government to direct the registrar to take on record, condoning the delay and changing the contents. And here we have to just see Rule 12, Sub Rule 3. The order passed by the central government is required to be filed with the registrar along with the fee. Central government will give an order and that order has to be collected by the company or the party concerned. It has to be filed with the registrar along with the requisite fee. This is what this rule says in respect of condonation of delay and rectification of register of charges authorized as a special case by the central government, with the presumption that it is not injurious to either the creditors or shareholders and it was done innocently and inadvertently, and it ratifies and condones. And that brings us to the close of presentation, and the flow has been quite fantastic in this registration of charges and it is quite useful to all of us. And you can visit this ready reckoner sheet for the individual subtopics, breaking down the whole presentation into chapter wise steps. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.